in activity 11.5, it says the owner of Berg River Traders is concerned that the bookkeeper could be defrauding the business through the creditors system. List 2 of the internal control procedures that must be applied in a business to maintain control over creditors. So let's quickly go to that. You just had to list any of these 2 internal controls. The most obvious one is to divide duties. In other words, the same accountant shouldn't do the CJ and CAJ and compile the creditors ledger and creditors list and post to the creditors control account at the end of the month. You should actually have 3 different people that take responsibility for those tasks. Proper authorization of purchases and payments. In other words, the owner needs to sign off on purchases and payments or a manager. Check accuracy of invoices from creditors. Okay, so ensure that it's correctly recorded in the CJ. Invoices to be stamped before payment. Proper documentation. Check the goods received with the invoice or the delivery note. Check for damaged goods. And the balance of the creditors control account must correspond with the creditors list, or you can also say it must be reconciled with the creditors list. Okay. Then the second thing they want you to do is they want you to calculate the correct balance for the creditors control account in the general ledger showing all calculations. And now you will see they don't want you to do a creditors control account. They just want you to do a calculation. So the format is a little bit different, and I will guide you through it as we go. And then the third thing they want you to do is to draw up an adjusted creditors list, which we've been doing the whole time. Okay, so then they give you the reconciliation of the creditors control account and the ledger, and they give you an incorrect balance according to the creditors control account. So now this is not the opening balance of the creditors control account on 1 August. This is the balance that the accountant has calculated at the end of August. And this is the balance that needs to be adjusted or changed. So we will actually do a calculation for our creditors control account. You will notice that this is how your answer booklet looks. And we will start this calculation with our incorrect balance according to the creditors control account. Okay, and this column will be for the details. So we will say why we are doing what we are doing. And this column will be for adding or subtracting values to get to the correct balance. If we add, then the values are just positive. If we subtract, then we will put the values in brackets. You will see. And then they also give you the provisional creditors list. Okay, so the creditors' names and the amounts owed to them before any adjustments. So I want you, as always, to go and compile an adjusted creditors list, starting by just listing the creditors' names and the amounts that we owe them in brackets. In this case, there wasn't any of them that had a negative value. Now we can start to look at the adjustments or the errors and omissions. The first one said, an invoice for 780 Rand received from Maree Distributors was correctly entered in the CJ. Okay, so the fact that it's correct in the CJ immediately tells you if the journal is correct, the control account is correct. Okay, so we just have to fix the list. But incorrectly posted to their account as 708 Rand. In other words, the accountant just swapped the 0 and the 8 when they posted to Maree Distributors account. Okay, so we said that we owe Maree Distributors 708 Rand more, where we actually had to add 780. So you have to go and calculate the difference between the two values. 780 minus 708 is 72 Rand, and we have to go and add that value to Maree Distributors. Why am I adding? Because it's an invoice, and invoices increase the value that we owe to creditors. Remember, this little 1 is just to indicate that this was error and omission number 1. Then the second one said, Theron CC's account was incorrectly balanced. The balance should be 4,500 Rand and not 5,400 Rand. Okay, so that's once again just a mistake in the list. Now you have to go and determine the difference between the two values. Okay, so it's not 5,400, it's 4,500. So we have to go and subtract 900 Rand in the list. Okay, so Theron CC must be decreased by 900 Rand, and this is adjustment number 2. Then adjustment number 3 said a check for 3,240 Rand issued to Dreyer Limited in part payment of the account was not entered in the CPJ at all. Now, if it's not in the journal at all, then it won't have been taken to the debit side of the control account, and it wouldn't have been taken to Dreyer Limited's account in the debtors ledger or at the end in the debtors list. So we have to fix it in both places. Then they say discount of 360 Rand was received for prompt payment. Okay, so we have to go and record the check, and we have to go and record the discount in both the control accounts and the list. To do it, we will do it like in the control account. Okay, you will now write what we need to do. So you will say, check to Dreyer Limited was omitted. In other words, it wasn't recorded at all. Okay, so omitted is just a shorter way of saying it. Because this check was omitted, we need to decrease the total value that we owe our creditors because we actually made a payment. So we owe our creditors 3,240 Rand less. And because we are subtracting, we put it in brackets. Please do not make a little minus there. That will not be accepted. Okay, so put it in brackets because we are debiting creditors control. This 3,240 Rand must also be subtracted from Dreyer Limited's account in the creditors list. But that's not the end of the adjustment. They said we also received some discount. Okay, so now in the control account, we have to go and record the discount because it wasn't recorded at all. So you say discount received from Dreyer Limited, omitted, and you have to write the creditor's name. Okay, omitted means it wasn't recorded at all. And discount will decrease the total value that we owe creditors. Okay, so you put the 360 Rand in brackets, and Dreyer Limited gave us some discount, so we owe them 360 Rand less. Then the fourth entry says the total of the creditors control column of the CAJ was overcast. Okay, so now you have to remember the CAJ will go to the debit side of creditors control. Okay, so now we subtracted, remember CAJ means that we owe less money. We subtracted 200 Rand more than we should have because it was overcast by 200 Rand. So to fix this mistake, we will only fix it in the creditors control account because journal columns doesn't affect the list. But to fix this mistake, we have to go and add 200 Rand back because we said our total returns was 200 Rand more than it actually was in reality. So in your creditors control account calculation thingy, you will have to go and say the CAJ column was overcast. Okay, you can just say it like that. CAJ column was overcast. And the effect that this has is we have to add 200 Rand back. If it was undercast, then we should have subtracted 200 Rand more. Then the next one or the last one says a debit note. So once again, immediately you need to know it's the CAJ of 730 Rand issued to A de Jong and Company for goods returned has not been entered at all. So this 730 Rand was not part of the CAJ at all, and therefore it wouldn't have been taken to the creditors control account as part of total returns at the end of the month, and it wouldn't have been taken to the balance that we owe R. de Jong and Company in the creditors list. So we have to fix it in both places. CAJ or a debit note means we're returning goods, so it means that the value must be subtracted from the control account and the list. And we will do it like this. In the control account, you say debit notes to R. de Jong and Company omitted. Omitted means not recorded at all. Okay. A debit note means that we will pay less because we returned goods. So the total value owed to our creditors decreased. That's why I'm putting it in brackets. And then R. de Jong and Company's balance must also be decreased because we don't have to pay them that 730 Rand. We returned some goods. And that's it. I actually like this format more than the other format. So now to finish off and to see whether you did everything correctly, you just quickly go and do this calculation on your calculator. So you say 16,389 minus 3,240 minus 360 plus 200 minus 730 gives you 12,259. And then for your list, you can just close your brackets and do the calculations and add all of the values in your list together. And luckily, you can see that the list now has the same balance as the control account.